Welcome to Sacred Rite, the podcast where we explore holistic living, the wisdom of ancestral traditions, and the path to deepening our connection with ourselves, one another, and the earth. Together, we will embrace wellness in all its forms and rediscover the sacred callings that guide us home. I'm your host, Amber Young, and today we're getting our hands in the soil. In this episode, I speak with Owen Lindsay, regenerative farmer, wild seed steward, and the earth-loving force behind the gardens that feed the herbal offerings of Mythic Medicine. Owen's work is deeply rooted in the rhythms of nature, the intelligence of minerals, and the quiet teachings of plants. He's a practitioner of Hugelkultur, a traditional and deeply regenerative method of building garden beds from wood and organic matter, and his approach to farming is both reverent and revolutionary. Together, we explore Owen's journey into herbalism and land-based living, the powerful role minerals play in connecting to soil health to our own vitality, and why collecting and growing wild seeds may be one of the most important acts of stewardship in our time. We also talk about what it means to garden, not just for food, but for medicine, for spirit, and how Owen tends the land in support of Mythic Medicine's apothecary. Whether you're a home gardener, a plant lover, or someone longing to reconnect with the land, this episode is a grounded and soulful invitation to listen more deeply to the earth beneath your feet. Let's dig in. Hi, Owen.
Hi, Amber.
Welcome to Sacred Rite podcast. I've been so looking forward to this interview with you. I'm so interested to know everything you have going on and hear your expertise and hear everything that you've been learning and growing through on your journey. So could you share with listeners about your journey into herbalism and regenerative farming? And we're going to go into the practice of Hugelkultur because you've been going into that in your own life, on your own farm and homestead. And so can you share with us your journey?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for having me. It's so nice to be here. And thanks for giving a voice to farmers. That's so cool. I mean, I can't think of like a workforce that's less heard, really, but right now it really is an exciting time to be a farmer with the regenerative farming movement and all the things going on with that. And it seems like a real shift from what we have been doing through like big ag and chemicals and all this stuff. We're kind of switching like a total 180 to creating life instead of fighting life in a way, which is really cool. So I've been farming growing things for 30 years. It's kind of hard to say where everything started. I started with permaculture. I'll just be real here for a second. Like I grew marijuana for like 9 years, which was very much like industrial ag. It was using chemical fertilizers that were organic, and depleting soil. And a lot of times you would use these big pots that didn't even touch the soil. It was kind of the same model. For the last 9 years, I've been using Hugelkulturs and growing herbs for our medicinal remedy business. It's been, just another total 180, like only using, things from the earth, using compost and manure and logs in the garden and no-till. And I'm having way better results than I ever did with the store-bought, basically like energy drinks for your plants that don't do anything for soil life. I got into Hugelkultur out of necessity, basically, which is kind of how Hugelkultur came about. Out of necessity of poor soil, my wife and I had moved to a place where the soil was really poor. And so in order to like fulfill our dreams of growing our herbal remedy business, I had to build soil there. And so I just thought, I've heard about swales, mounds. Hugelkultur is kind of the newest term, which is kind of like the latest adoption of it. That term came around in the 1900s, but this has been around since 3000 BC, I think is what we think now. started in North America with like the Three Sisters was like the first kind of mounds that we know about, the corn and squash and is it beans? I'm
It
spacing it
is.
right now. Yeah. So I got into Hugelkultur out of necessity and got into herbalism. I'd always been interested in growing useful plants, but my wife was at the time girlfriend. She was dabbling in herbal medicine, and when we met, she was selling some St. John's wort infused oil in her Etsy shop. She mainly slung vintage clothing. She taught me how to infuse herbs into everything, into honey, into water, into alcohol, into oil. When we met, I told her, like, I could see myself growing herbs for your business. And I don't know, that just was one of those things that really binded our relationship and solidified it. And here we are doing that. So yeah, that's how I got into it, I guess.
I love that story. That's super sweet. My husband and I, we met at a wild edibles foraging class. And when you have these overlapping commonalities and these similarities and this love, this deep love for the earth and for our bodies, it just connects you in this good way. So I'm glad you guys were able to tune into that connection and kind of it helped support your relationship and kind of maybe go, maybe I could be with this person. They could grow herbs for me and I can make medicines. And my husband and I have that similar relationship because he's such the green thumb, such the farmer. And I also love gardening and I'm super into that. But he is very much, I mean, he has a business where he farms, so it's like his way of life and his way of being. And yeah, it's nice to be like, okay, you're going to grow all the goods and I get to like reap the benefits and make the other things. And it's nice to have that relationship and be in reciprocity with your partner in those ways.
Yeah, I know it's huge. I mean, we always have that, and all the other things too. But it's really nice to be on kind of the same train with your direction in life.
For
And
sure.
our strengths really complement each other. Like I'm also the gardener in our relationship, and she's kind of the face of the business. She's the really knowledgeable herbalist, and I'm the farmer, basically.
Yeah. Honoring farmers. Farmers definitely need to be honored. That's something where my family, we send gratitude every day before we eat dinner together. And we always thank the farmers. That is just a part of our gratitude practice. Yeah. So always rooting for y'all. So I want to go into what you're talking about with Hugelkultur. And so Hugelkultur is like this Germanic word, right? It's means hill culture or mound
Yeah,
culture.
mound culture.
And like, I like what you were saying, talking about the Hugelkultur. This is just the most recent way of thinking about this way of farming and regenerating land. But like you said, it's been around for many, many, many years. I mean, agriculture has been around for 10,000 years, but there's always been a relationship to humans tending the plants on the outskirts of the forest and living in this way. And you can see cross-culturally in different parts of the world, there's been a mound type culture when it comes to growing food and having relationships to plants in place. And so could you tell listeners who might have never heard this term Hugelkultur or mound culture in terms of farming and regenerative farming, can you explain a little bit about it?
Yeah, so many different cultures have had different kinds of mounds that they have built. And like I said, it came after agriculture kind of started in the Fertile Crescent, as far as we know, 10,000 years ago. And then about 9,000 years ago in North America, agriculture started. But it was about 3,000 years BC that Hugelkulturs started in North America, mounds. And then like a couple thousand later, they pop up in Africa and then just kind of everywhere. And I find that really interesting how these things within 1,000 years, they're popping up all over the world. But basically the Hugels, different cultures built them different way, but it's basically just compost, and it's no-till. The Hugel cultures that we typically think about today are brush and logs, and then you put like a layer of compost over that, and like usually you dig out the soil first and put that aside, and then you lay in some logs and some brush, and you put the soil back over that, and then you put a layer of compost on that and plant into that. But if you have poor soil, you probably don't want to dig it up and put it back in. Another thing is if you dig it up first, you're going to throw the whole seed bank right on top of your mound, and you're going to be battling weeds. So in today's modern world, I typically buy some soil, and I usually find some wood chips where I live on the West Coast. There's plenty of like free wood chips to be found, and other things you can put on top. It's a lot easier, especially if you have really rocky soil, or if you have soil that you don't know what was down there and you don't want to throw it on top. That's how I tend to do it. And another thing with farmers, the first year you kind of want to get going, and if you're digging up your soil, composting it maybe to get rid of the seed bank and everything in it, and then throwing it back on top, that might take an extra year to do that. So I tend to buy soil. I cheat a little bit. I find wood chips. It's about being resourceful. But basically, the reason why you'd want to do these besides poor soil is while these logs and this brush decomposes, it's slowly letting out bioavailable nutrients that is much easier for the plants to take up than just out of regular soil. They retain water, so you don't have to water as much. They also stay a little bit warmer, so you get a little bit longer of a growing season, which is cool in a lot of places. And you're using resources from your area. You're using stuff that would be considered waste, like brush and maybe tree branches or trees. And you're capturing water as well, too. They're like a sponge eventually, and they just retain water really well. It's a living system. It's full of microbes and organisms. And then from there, you even get I have a lot of moles and voles and stuff like that in my garden, but I just don't grow anything in them that the ground beast will want to eat, basically. So you got to kind of choose what you want to grow. Although I've grown carrots straight in them and they're fine going down into roots. The carrot goes down into branches and wood, and your carrots are a little bit stubby and weird shape, but they're fine. You can totally do that. That's the basic of the Hugelkultur.
So cool. And I love that you can use biomass from the land you live on, or dependent how much land you live on and what's available in your neighborhood. Maybe if neighbors have tree branches that are coming down or being pruned or being cut down, and maybe they're going to just get rid of it. Well, if you saw that was available, like someone in your neighborhood's cutting down a tree, then you could be like, hey, what are you doing with the wood? Can I use it? And so there's ways that we can really access this biomass, because dependent where you live, it's super available. Where we live, on the land we live on, there's so much, right? We have so many trees, and branches are falling, trees are falling. There's a lot of ivy, particularly on the outskirts of the land. Our land has a lot of biodiversity, a lot of different plants and trees, but a lot of ivy coming through, which my husband and I had an interesting conversation about ivy yesterday, where he was saying that ivy was supporting the land. Like we think of ivy here, at least on our land, like, oh no, it's going up, it's growing, it's leaching nutrients from the trees, it's leaching nutrients from the plants all around, or, causing trees to fall down. But ivy also has its place where it helps to also regenerate life and give certain nutrients. And so we were thinking maybe it's not such a bad thing. It's almost like they're pulling down these trees to be like, let's build back the soil in a healthy way, because that's what we need. We need the soil to be healthy again. And to do that, to get life, you have to give life. It's almost like this sacrifice. And that's kind of always been true, mimicked and mirrored in nature. Life always recycles and regenerates back to the earth. And we have to be able to hold that life. I don't know, our land, I want my land to hold that life and keep recycling that life. And yeah, it's a really beautiful, powerful thing. So I was really inspired with this Hugelkultur stuff that you've been doing. And I was talking to my husband, I was like, okay, let's go. There's a lot of fallen trees. Let's go create beds around the edges of our property, instead of just we have built beds where we are, a lot of raised beds, but a lot of different spaces that we're tending. But I'm like, why not on the outskirts in some places that need to regenerate maybe more life? Like we have a really huge northern redwood tree in our yard. And it's almost like it's sucked a lot of, because of how the land has been tended before we were here. It's almost like there's not a lot of life around the bottom of it, where you really want to have like this balance of different beings, plant beings, the shrubs and the undergrowth, and you want everything. So I'm kind of thinking, where can we build that back up? And I've been really inspired by your work.
That's another thing. Like one of my kind of newer passions is land restoration. And a lot of times you have to take out certain things to have other things be there. Like with the ivy, you have to pull it all out to have anything else survive there.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, you're also taking out a whole ecosystem that's existing. And, kind of like the way you justify that is you're going to build an ecosystem with more biodiversity, more plants growing and more bugs being there, which is like the basis of the food cycle, and more small creatures eating the bugs and all the way up the food chain, But yeah, you have all that ivy. Maybe you could even burn some down to its, because if you burn plants, you burn them down to their mineral components. Basically, you lose the microbes and the beneficial stuff if they composted slowly, and the slow release of nutrients. But with the ash, you could fertilize your gardens with ash. It has almost everything you need in it, mineral wise. Compost and manure is better for sure, but it's like a free, nutrient source for your plants.
For sure. Is that like sort of like biochar?
Well, biochar is a little different because you're taking away the oxygen when you're burning, so you end up with charcoal. And for a long time, I didn't understand this either, but you're basically building like hotels for your microbes to live in with biochar. The biochar can live in the soil. It's for one, like sequestering carbon that way, but it can live in the soil for something like 500 years or more.
Wow.
It's just like it creates these like super homes for microbes in your garden.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And the amazing thing about this practice of using all this biomass and building these incredible beds. And I like what you're also saying of like, if you don't have the healthy soil around the land, add some soil to your hugelkultur.
Yeah.
And add some, the tree bark and everything and really build it up. And over time, the thing about hugelkulturs, right, is it's really minimal input after you create it, because over time it's decomposing, right? The wood's decomposing within the hugelkultur, and that's just creating more life and regenerating the soil completely and kind of just moving life through.
Yeah. So the basic things for growing healthy plants, is you want compost and microbes. And if you don't till, then you're not destroying that whole system every time. And so with hugels, you have this slow releasing compost. The trees are slowly decomposing. You're slowly releasing nutrients, and the microbes are always there building. So you've already won that battle, basically. And then, so it makes it so it's a lot of work kind of in the beginning to set them up. But then for the next 10 years, you're not really doing much. You might be sprinkling some wood ash or going through with some composted chicken manure or something once a year. I mean, that's what I do. If that, a lot of years I don't do anything.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
And how long have you had some of your current hugelkultur beds?
Well, let's see. At our last place, we just moved 3 years ago. I had those going for 4 years, and there was still like visible logs sticking out of them. I hardly ever added any amendments at that place. We had chickens there, so I would add in chicken compost. I did that 1 year, but I had these tomatoes that were in cages that were as tall as me, 6 feet tall, that grew all the way out of the cage down onto the ground and then ran out for like 5 feet out of these hugels. And that was a first year hugelkultur with a tree that my neighbor fell that was just straight. It fell into the yard, and I buried it within a couple months and planted on it. So it wasn't like really decomposing much at all.
Mm-hmm. Because to make a really successful starting hugelkultur, you want to have some of those already decomposing trees and wood in there, right?
Well, you usually add some compost, and that would get used up pretty quick within the first 2 years. I like to do layers of soil and wood chips because the wood chips take a long time to break down. The roots can grow through them. You just get all kinds of worm activity. Basically, when you have compost, it's very bioavailable nutrients for the plants. I think I said this before, but just if you're trying to get the nutrients out of the ground, the plants are like picking through like all of these different minerals that are not good for the plant. It's trying to find the stuff that works for it, but you already have the stuff there that they're made of, basically. Does that make sense? Like the plants are made out of like the same stuff you have there. So all the nutrients they need is already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. For those that might not understand this or know much about soil health in terms of wanting a lot of microbial life and mycorrhizal fungi a part of it.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I could try to. So,
why is that important to have healthy microbes in the soil?
Well, that's the conversation now, is healthy mycorrhizae fungi on the roots. Those are the little white things you see on the roots. And it's crazy because we don't even exactly know what that is. We don't have like a family for that kind of nutrients or that kind of system where this fungus is trading sugars from the plant that the plant's taking from the sun and the photosynthesis process in the air, and feeding these microbes that are in turn like giving it like nitrogen and like potassium and like all the things that it needs, right? And so we're hyper focused on the mycorrhizal, the root fungus that's helping the plant in gardening. But really, with these hugels, you have the entire fungal kingdom, like you would have in a forest. You have fungus breaking down logs. You have fungus just growing out of the ground. You have many different versions of fungus working in the system, like in a forest. We're basically trying to recreate the forest floor. And one thing I just tried that's pretty cool is you can go into a forest and push away some leaves and take a couple shovelfuls of soil, put it into a bucket, fill it with water, and pour that into your garden. And supposedly you're supposed to get a mushroom dominant garden, not just a mycorrhizal dominant garden through doing this practice. It's like super simple. It's not like really impactful in the forest. And just a bucket sprinkled across your rows can go a really long way.
Wow. That is such a good idea. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the great thing about Hugelkultur is it really mimics that natural forest floor ecosystem. And so to help support your own home Hugelkultur that you're building, since it's not of the forest, then like this is a good way to enhance all of that.
Yeah. And to go back to what you were saying about like maybe your neighbors have some logs you can use. That's the thing when you start getting into regenerative practices, your home becomes part of the system. Like, okay, you're like, okay, I'm going to use wood ash from the fireplace. So I'm going to make sure when I start my fires, there's no tape on the cardboard, or I'm not burning anything that's got heavy printing on it or weird stuff. You're saving all your compost. You're communicating with your neighbors about resources, and all of a sudden you have the community, you have a healthy home, and a lot of other things start to regenerate as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's the awesome thing too, is like, it makes me think of really almost trading and bartering with your neighbors of, oh, I have this wood ash for you. Oh, you have this biomass for me. Or I have been thinking of that in terms of some of my friends. I have a lot of my dear sisters are really good at creating and making things, and I am too. We like to be these self-sustaining entities and living in a really good way. And I was thinking, man, we all don't need to be making really high quality soap. We could be trading. You make the high quality soap and I'm going to make these things, and we just trade each other. Because I was thinking this too, is like sometimes it feels like, oh, I want to do it all. I want to be totally self-sustaining, but we're not really self-sustaining. We really rely on our community and our village. And that's always been the case for humans. And so I want to aspire to be self-sustaining to a degree, but it's almost like this collective self-sustainment.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I've been talking about the same thing with my friends. Like I have one friend who has an apple orchard and he's super good at grafting, and knows everything about fruit trees. And like I have all the herbs for our business that I grow. And like another friend of mine has grapes, and we don't collaborate, but we just started talking like, why aren't we collaborating? I mean, we've got all these resources and too much of them. I always have too many herbs. But my friend Jacob always has too many apples. It's
Yeah,
why are we
exactly.
doing something?
Yeah, time to start trading and supporting each other too. Of like, oh, I'll come over, I'll help harvest the herbs that need to be harvested, and I'll get to take it home. Oh, I'll come to your house, I'll come pick the apples and tend to that. Or we could have a cider pressing party and we all get to take some apples home or, cut them up for dehydration. And it brings us back to that more village living of I'll come over, I'll support this, and then I'll be able to gain in some way of like being sent home with a nice whole plant infused herbal body oil or getting sent home with whatever it is.
Yeah, more of that. I mean, it's so easy to just be on your phone and see your friends there. It's so weird these days that way.
Yeah, it'd be better if we were all, that's really the goal. That's been the goal and vision for us, is to find land that we can co-create with some really close friends, that we're all contributing to collective gardens and we all have our own different lanes of genius that we're supporting the whole. But yeah, how to really make that happen too. It's like a lot of talk. And I hear this talk in so many different circles, right? People are really looking to go back to that way of living and being, instead of so isolated on our own little properties.
Yeah, that's the dream, right? I've always dreamt about that, living with your friends and creating like the commune.
Totally, because
Yeah.
too, it calls us forward to show up in these really beautiful ways, right? Because our families, our nuclear families, or our partners at least, they can't hold it all for us, right? We really rely on community and friendships. And I feel like we've all in this modern day time have found, or some of us have found, ways to create more of that villaging and connection and friendship tending and making efforts to go and meet up with someone or go over to someone's house, and but how to make it more easeful where we're all together. And then, something happens in a dynamic, like maybe you're upset with your partner, you just need to be held by your friend to hear your process. It's like we could do that for each other in this space, but also support like a greater vision of tending each other's children and helping the gardens together. And there's a lot of beauty that can unfold in these close, more village type living situations. And it's cool to see that kind of unfold in this modern time too, around especially more popular in like places like Costa Rica, where you hear a lot of families coming together, buying like a big piece of land, and people are kind of making their own little plots in their villages and really trying to go back to the earth and supporting one another and creating a economy that is rich within.
Yeah, that's the dream. We're really fortunate to live where we do, where there is a strong community, and there's not, it's pretty boring town. There's not a lot going on. So we have to entertain each other and go out and stuff. And it's always been that way, but it hasn't been quite the village. And especially once you start having kids, you really realize like, oh man, we don't have any family where we live. I'm so jealous of the people that do have grandparents around to help with the child care and everything. But yeah, I think also regenerative farming is a lot about regenerating systems too, like rebuilding connections and even like connections through the marketplace, right? And through farmers, things like farmers setting prices, kind of like the Saturday markets or farmers markets, type of situation, but on a bigger scale where there's more transparency, there's more cooperation, and things are, you recognize the webs of life, in the soil, and that you recognize the webs of life in the marketplaces. And then you recognize, like we were talking about, the kind of broken webs of trying to raise a family in this day and age, where it's so, being a farmer, it's not the most lucrative business all the time. So it's like a lot of times for good schooling or childcare, you have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So with this, you want to be successful and you want it to happen quick,
Yeah.
I guess is what I was thinking there. But
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really the vision I'm calling for. It is something really greater for our children and these next generations, being able to get high quality care in the way that feels really good and safe for you.
Mm,
Like there's a lot of talk in our friend group of creating a little school co-op, and I'm a teacher and I've had friends offer to figure out how to pay my salary so I can support our children, but not
mm,
just me, that other parents would come, like, because I don't want to work the standard quote unquote school system. And I don't. Like I teach part-time right now, and I took a year off when I first had my daughter, Sequoia, and then I took 14 months off, went back to school teaching, but went back part-time this year. And I feel like that's actually super manageable. I really like the part-time working model. It's 2 days a week, 3 days a week, A weeks and B weeks, and goes every other, because I get the majority of my time with my daughter. And then I also get to like tend the hearts and minds of children, the next generation, which I'm so grateful for, even if I work in a situation where I don't agree with so many different things that are happening within the larger system as a whole, right? Like working for a public school system. I would love to be with my daughter and be with a collective group of kids and families that are all contributing and showing like their lane of genius, right? Like if somebody has, like, you bring in somebody who does regenerative farming, you bring in people who have a lot of musicality, you bring in people who have art, infused ways of, so just teaching the children everything, people herbalists, and they're kind of getting this collective education together that's rooted in real life skills. And so I have this larger dream, and we're not exactly in that situation because I'm still teaching in a public school system, but I'm finding so much beauty in it still. But like you're saying, if we were able to make it more affordable for families, right? Like we pay for a nanny on the days that I go to work, because I think like it's just so important to have really present tended care. And it's really hard, I feel like, to find a really high quality childcare situation, like a childcare setting, especially. Like I think the childcare situations are better as a nanny, or like a nanny share or something like that, where your kid is really getting somebody who's with them in it, right? And not distracted by all the things or whatever's going on. And so, yeah, in this day and age, it can be really hard to find. But if people were living in this way, like you said, this marketplace mirroring this regenerating the land collectively, and then at a bigger level, there would be more opportunity for kids to, I don't know, be with families that maybe are wanting that situation. So I guess what I'm saying, I kind of went on a side tangent about now education because I'm passionate about it, is that, if we can teach the kids how to have their hands in the dirt and their hearts in the sun and be working together, and they're learning how to cook the food they grow, like all the science, all the math, all the things. But I just want to see it more on that level. And so to support people like you and your work, like you're farming and tending the land, but your daughter also, needs a present, loving, care person there to be teaching her and with her. And like, how can we create that for each other? Because I'm like you, where I'm really jealous. People have grandparents that are super close by, because we don't have that either. We don't have any family super close by. I mean, the closest is my daughter's Mimi, my husband's mom, and she lives like over an hour away. So it's still not the closest situation. We're calling that for all of us in because I think we're all really craving a different way of tending our children.
yeah, it's like I think we're kind of realizing these systems aren't working so hot. Like, yeah, like you said, like having a nanny. We had a nanny that we could barely afford when we started our business, and she's wonderful. My daughter's actually going to be a flower girl in her wedding coming up.
Aww.
They're so cute. They're like sisters. I feel like, this regenerative movement it's trying not to leave anything out. It's like a whole new rolling system. And it's not like the organic food movement where it was kind of like this side against that side. It's kind of like, let's get everyone rolling on this. Let's all like live healthier lives. Let's live happier lives. We all know what we want and we know what's right, but we're kind of following these old systems.
Mm-hmm.
And, in agriculture, the way that we're pushing these old systems is, well, on like most of our food comes from these mega farms, whether you like it or not. 1,000-acre farms that are managed by farm managers that get more money by the more food that they can produce for the farmer. It's almost like housing management, like someone else does all the work and they give the landowner the money, basically, in the end. So you have someone who's like doing nutrients, and someone who's doing pesticides, and someone who's doing water, and maybe someone who's doing like tractors and stuff like this. And their whole incentive is to make money, and it's not really the best thing for the land.
Mm-hmm.
And the landowners doesn't really care about the land that much. They're just getting a paycheck. So that's a huge broken system where the people managing it are getting discounts and benefits and kickbacks from like Monsanto and other like chemical companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big broken thing with our food system. The USDA has recognized what they call regenerative farming, and it's all based on soil and only soil. They're all great practices. It's like cover cropping, no tilling or very little disturbance. There's like a 6-point definition of what regenerative farming is in the USDA, and they're trying to move farmers in that direction. And even if these big ag companies would stop tilling, that would be huge. That'd be a huge carbon reduction. We could probably get rid of our worry about too much carbon in the atmosphere by just keeping, our fields covered, millions of acres covered. But they don't really take into account what comes out of it, like you're all of a sudden you have more nature when you're not, more life when you're not spraying insecticides. You have healthier families, stronger communities, all these things when you're truly going by regenerative principles, not just what the United States government says is regenerative,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a lot of visuals while you were talking there, and farming and big ag has caused so many rippling issues within humanity. And I mean, there's so much that we can see that is related that are just bad, poor practices for people's health, the health of the soil, the health of human bodies, everything. Like, it's just wild that we've gotten here, that humanity has gotten in this place where the dollar is above people. And I always think to myself, how can people sleep at night with themselves knowing that do they have the knowledge or do they not? Are they just convincing themselves that this is the right thing to do? There's it's hard not to just focus on, wow, the greed, right? The greed that is just permeating below in so many ways, but we just have to make different choices and see through the distractions and choose a different way. Like, I don't want to support buying this product from this monocropped farm that is not even full of like nutrients. So why am I eating it? It's just like feeding disease in the body. So many people are eating food that I'm like, wow, I can't believe it's just the food that they serve in schools. I'm just going to go on this for a moment because this is something really hits my heart hard. Schools, lunches, the breakfast they feed these children. I cannot even believe that this is legal. I could come to tears about this. Like all the sugar cereal, they give them cereal and they get all this like white milk, but the white milk has like sugar added and who knows what kind of emulsifiers. And then all these like packaged products, these little like cinnamon buns and but they have this free breakfast program at I think it's statewide, but at our school, the kids, they're served breakfast and if they can take it or not. And the food is just so not nutrient dense at all. Like, it's just horrible food. It's like the worst food I can think of. And this is what we're giving.
Nationwide.
Yes.
The Department of Justice buys the food for our school and for our military. So this is the stuff they're feeding soldiers. And that's another big thing that's really broken with these systems is we've basically gone to war against our soils. We're rolling out these tractors that are very much like tanks. We're spraying them with chemicals, which is much like bioweapons, killing life. I can't. It's crazy. And, my wife and I, we shop at the co-op, we eat organic. But the more I find out about our co-op, like, for one thing, General Mills sends out generic labels to all these co-ops that are like conglomerates, right? And they'll send like a can of beans, and then the co-op slaps their label on it. Ours here is Field Day. I don't know if you're familiar with that
Yeah, we
brand.
have that up here.
That's General Mills generic label produce. So
Wow.
you might even think you're eating good and doing and helping the environment, that you're supporting General Mills, you know.
Wow.
So, yeah, the whole thing is just twisted, and nobody really knows what's going on. And it's, yeah. I feel like the regenerative movement really has some hope and some promise. You know, even with big ag, it could do a lot of good.
Absolutely. And they're going to they will see the profit margins if that's what their big aim is, because they're going to the land will be regenerating and it will be such abundance, right? There will be so much abundance there. Yeah.
It's all about creating the most at whatever the cost. And living organisms, even microbes, don't fit into that picture. Like Monsanto right now is coming out with a regenerative line of seeds, like seed coatings. And they've got this, they're messing with microorganisms, with the fundamentals of life, basically. They've found some that can take up potassium at high levels. And so they put that coating on seeds along with an insecticide coating, a fungicide coating that this thing can survive, and like some chemical fertilizer. There's like 5 different layers on these seeds that kills everything but their microbe, basically. And they're saying this is regenerative. This is their regenerative line, which is the exact opposite of what regenerative farming is. Regenerative farming is about creating more biodiversity, creating more life. We are life. Like, the reason why we can eat plants and survive and thrive is because we are made of the same stuff. All life on this planet is made of the same materials. So plants, they need nitrogen, which basically they turn into amino acids like proteins. They need phosphorus, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, right? So humans, the main minerals they need is magnesium, potassium, calcium, and sodium. We're basically identical. We've evolved from the same thing, basically. Way down the line, all life on the planet is made of these minerals that are very common. It's not like we're made of like gold or platinum or these really rare minerals. We're made of the most common stuff, right? And plants have this ability to take out what we need out of the soil, and then it's in this bioavailable form for us to eat, you know. And if we eat something that eats plants like a cow, or if you eat meat, it's even more bioavailable because those minerals are attached to amino acids and fats and proteins that our body can just, okay, like we're that stuff. We'll just incorporate that super easy.
Yeah, that's a beautiful connection. And so important, why people need to make their own choices and informed choices about what they eat and what they're consuming, where you want to be consuming this high quality, nutrient dense plant or animal that's going to be feeding your life, because you're made of the same stuff, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It makes too much sense.
It's too easy. And it was so complicated for me, you know, like I started getting into it. Like soil was probably the last thing I got into. I was working with Hugelkulturs before I was even thinking about soil. I was already doing it. But then my wife had a health problem. She had like a crash. She was in bed for almost 2 years and she was mineral depleted. And here we were eating at the health food store, eating like the best food you could possibly get. And she was mineral deficient. I mean, it's crazy to think that, but like even in organic farming, they're only focused with plants on NPK. They'll see that on the side of soil. It's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But there are a couple of, there's like 3-4 other macronutrients that plants need, not even counting the trace minerals. They still need calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. So we're not giving that to our plants, for one. and we're giving it in this liquid, like kind of energy drink form, which doesn't allow them the soil, like really quickly, they deplete the soil of the micronutrients. So you're not getting that either. You're just sustaining this being with this liquid garbage, basically, this energy drink. And that's what we're eating, even organic food.
Yeah, for sure. It's just like sustaining, but it's not creating vitality and strength and health.
Yeah. So with my wife's health crash, we started doing HTMA, which is hair mineral or hair test mineral analysis.
Hair tissue mineral analysis.
You're familiar?
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's I know some people are a little wary about sending in things to labs, and especially like your hair. It's kind of like the old tales of the witch getting your hair, and, cursing you or something. I was like really hesitant to do it. But basically, you can see by what goes out in your hair, what minerals you're deficient in, which ones you have too much of, what kind of heavy metals you have in your body. And our whole family did it. And it was like surprising to see, like we all had copper toxicity from having copper pipes in our house. If you have that kind of turquoise around your faucets, drains, you probably have copper toxicity, which can cause all kinds of hormonal imbalances and mood swings. And it's not good. As soon as we got that under control, my 8-year-old daughter was like, her mood swings and breakdowns like pretty much diminished. It was crazy. We all started working with a mineral analysis advisor. I'm not sure what the title is for that, but we're all got our minerals back together. My wife's out walking like, miles a day, and like she's back to podcasting and working on the business, and we're all feeling a lot better. Minerals play a huge role in your life. Like I think just magnesium has something like 400 functions in the body. And then from there, there's another 600 reactions that come from that mineral reacting with other minerals. And what's interesting is it's the same in plants with magnesium. The way they mirror each other, it's crazy. Like calcium and magnesium creates like really strong cell wall structure in plants. Kind of like with us, they create bones and muscles, right? There's all these things that mirror. It's always been kind of out of grasp for me, but with my wife's crash and our whole family's kind of like health problems related to minerals, I've really dove into it.
Yeah, it's so important. It is so important to remineralize the body. And I'm happy to see a shift in like the healthcare world. If people are really talking about this subject, and your wife is somebody who's really brought a lot of light and attention to this subject on her podcast, Medicine Stories. If you haven't listened, I highly suggest. It's my favorite podcast. I have listened to every single episode. And yeah, the mineral conversation is huge. And there's so much that mirrors what plants need and what we need, and that we really need to be feeding the most, we want the highest, most nutrient dense, mineral rich foods that we can possibly be having in medicines. And that's going to create the most vitality for not just the plants, but us and for the earth. It's so regenerative, which is that title. And I want to go back to that Monsanto seed, regenerative seed situation, and say there's so much greenwashing going on, and it is just tragic. And when you really start to dive into the roots, like you said, even at your local co-op, places that you feel like you can trust, so you have to always dig a little bit deeper. And yeah, the deeper you dig, hopefully the closer to like the truth slowly starts to reveal itself. And I think we're all feeling into that because we are the sickest we've ever been as, our especially in America. Oh my gosh, just the rates of chronic illness it's huge. And so many people are suffering, and it is so all linked to minerals. The minerals in our body, the lack of minerals we're getting because the lack of the minerals going into the soils and then our food, it's so connected. And so if we can bring more attention to regenerative farming and people start to support those choices and start to call our farmers forward, like the ones growing in not a good way, start to call them forward to grow in a good way, that's what we want. We have to really demand that together and make the wise choices when we can, when we have the ability to do so, and when we have the knowledge. that we know. Easier said than done.
Yeah. And it's, everybody wants to cash in on the regenerative movement. These big ad companies like Monsanto creating a regenerative line, quote unquote. And it's so tricky. And even like with the organic movement, it's like you could totally be spraying a field for 50 years and then let it sit for 2 years and grow something in it, and it's considered organic. That's like, as soon as you put like a name on it and boundaries, they're like, okay, how can we bend the boundaries?
Like organic is only 70. If it says organic, it could be like having 30% or who knows, give or take, but it's 70% organic. Yeah. So the other 30% could not be in some way. And so, it's like things have to say 100% organic, 100% grass-fed, grass-finished. Like you have to look at all the percentages and read between the lines of things.
Yeah, it's sad you got to go to the health food store and still read labels, I mean, I would love to go somewhere and just pull something off the shelf. I mean, my whole model has been like, okay, we'll grow the herbs for the herb business and grow like the strongest, best herbs possible. And with that money, we'll buy our groceries, But really, I think I got to start growing my own food now too. It's like, or otherwise I'm just eating cardboard, basically,
Totally. You have to, that's the thing too, is how to trade too with your friends. Everybody's gardening may be something different, even in trading those things, because it's dependent what you're planting. Sometimes there's such an abundance, as we know, like tomatoes that are super healthy, they're bumping, they're abundant. Sometimes there's more than you can eat available. So starting to share with each other and is a good way to go about things too. And going to our local farmers market, that's so important. For me, I just feel icky. I don't like eating out of season. I'm a very seasonal eater. Berries out of season gross me out. So berry season isn't really until like later June here and extends through like, the summer, and that's our berry season. And that's when I like to eat fresh berries. Other than that, I'm eating frozen berries, like berries at the store. It's gross. Even like you said, at the co-op, I know those berries are, even if they're organic, I'm like, those are not good berries. I don't want to eat those berries. So I know some people are like, oh, but that's like what we just have so much access in ways. But then there are like so many parts of our country in the United States and around the world, but don't have access to these things. Like you go to Arizona, the desert, it's literally like the desert. The food models that in the stores. You go, oh, there's not really much here. But something I appreciate about living where I live in the Pacific Northwest coast, which you do too, is having access to healthful food and vegetables from local farmers. Like we have amazing local farms. We have an incredible farmers market in Olympia. It's amazing. And down the street from my house, there's a farm stand from this local farmer. Her name is Willow. It's called like Sundance Farms, and she has a little roadside stand, and it's just like honor system. And I just love when things start coming back, because for a little bit of time, our markets are closed. Like winter gets more scarce. That's where we're eating more of we buy a whole cow, we put it in the freezer, then we're eating that meat and rooty vegetables and things like that. So just eating seasonally is so important too. And when you do that, you're kind of using what's available in your area, or at least we are. And I feel like that's the best way about it. But sometimes even when I get something from the store, like the carrots that aren't local, but we're really lucky that we had carrots all year that were local at our local co-op. But yeah, sometimes it's like, I don't want to get that, even if it's organic. You just know.
Yeah. I mean, it could be grown in a warehouse under fluorescent lights and fed organic, chemical fertilizer, and still be organic, hydroponically grown.
Totally.
We have that in our co-op, But yeah, those berries up north where you're up in Olympia. I grew up in Oregon on the coast. And I always say my first plant teacher was a logger, because my dad was a logger. He used to go out with my grandpa when he was a boy. My dad would say when he was old enough to touch the pedals of the tractor, he was driving tractors, and they would go out and camp. And just the two of them with a tractor and a saw, they would harvest trees and drag them into town. And this was before industrial logging, where they have these machines that just grab onto a tree, strip the branches, come back down and cut the tree, and they're on to the next one. This was just the two of them. And my dad would befriend squirrels. He my grandpa taught him what berries were edible, which ones were poisonous. My dad would take me on long walks when he would get home from work, and he would show me all the things that were edible and the things that were poisonous and tell me what the animals were. He was my first plant teacher. And, I grew up very kind of like how a lot of kids did in the 90s, like I was a latchkey kid. You'd come home, your parents are at work, you throw in a microwave food meal and eat. The Oreos are like unlimited access, so like trash food. But me and my friends would go out. We would usually I would wake up and eat like a sugary bowl of cereal and then go out all day till dinner just eating berries and eating shoots, stripping the skin off the berry shoots and eating the shoots. And I think that's what saved me. That and the Chinook salmon, where the runs were really strong. I could catch 3 a day during the season.
Wow.
On my tag, on your tag you would buy. And the biggest one I caught was a 40-pound salmon.
Incredible.
And just that real wild food is, I swear, what saved me, was having a lot of access to that.
How it just kind of supplemented in the small ways it could with the mix of all the processed foods in that time, especially, you grew up in the 90s, I grew up in the 90s. It was that all the microwavable stuff, getting the big things at Costco, like kids, you're in high school eating all the junk. And I'm just like, wow, how did we survive too? But then I also am like, well, I think what got me through, and you're so lucky you had that parent that was showing you the way in the forest and what you could eat. It's like I have memories of eating the local blackberries in our neighborhood. My mom and I, our family, we'd go picking for blackberries, and I'm like, maybe the blackberries saved me. And also the fact that my mom home cooked all our meals and packed all our lunch my whole life through school. And so she home cooked everything. I'm like, maybe that saved us, even if they weren't getting the most high quality things at the time. At that time when we were younger, it was organic, wasn't this big thing, that it is now. And that's the funny thing too, is when we start to have to label, then something's wrong. The fact that we have to start to categorize these foods because they're it's just such a funny time we live in.
Yeah. And it's, you go back a couple generations and they were doing all the things that we are striving to get back now. Farming is kind of like how your great grandma or grandpa used to live. That's what we're trying to do, basically,
For sure, is go back to the old ways. And that's the beautiful thing is in modern society, it's where we're always striving for the next thing. Things get so busy. People lose sight of our original instructions. And then we start to go back and remember, start tapping in and going, what did our ancestors do? When you start questioning that, that's where you're like, I think we've lost our way. We need to go back to the wisdom of the earth and the wisdom of the indigenous peoples of this earth. The answers are there if we tune into them. And we want to see it and we want to make those changes, because it's really hard too with the processed foods that people are addicted to, just the way of life, the not really thinking about their farmers, not even really thinking about where their food comes from. Some kids not really realizing that, whoa, food comes from the farm. This is this fresh, amazing grown food. It's they just think food comes out of a box, get things at the store. It's just interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, support your local farmers.
Yes.
I know it's kind of expensive sometimes, but the whole trade thing is great too. A farmer friend of mine, I DJ'd his 40th birthday party, and his wife had set it up as a surprise, and they gave me a pretty good section of a pig for DJing that. So
nice. Yes.
Right now, it was great.
I'm all about the barter and trade, Owen. I'm all about it. I'm like, what can we do? My husband and I, if we could barter for something that we already have, we will do it.
Yeah. We do a lot of that with our medicines too. We do trades all the time. My wife especially.
Yes. Yeah. That's the fun thing when you start making medicines and you start making things, because I also make medicines, herbal medicines.
I saw that.
Have that connection too. And it's just, when you start having these things, it's just fun to be like, okay, what do you have? Oh, you've got this tallow soap. Oh, I've got this hydrosol. Here you go. And just, help supporting each other. It's so sweet to do that. And we can do that. We can all do that. some people are doing it, and we could all do it if we really wanted to. See, we all have these gifts. And yeah, it's just about revisualizing a new and different way and getting away from the distractions like the commercials, the whatever that is just implanting things in people's minds. And just hopefully they can hear something like a podcast like this that could even open their minds. Who knows? Like just, the seeds that are planted. And that's why I really like working with the students I work with. I could work at a Waldorf Montessori school. I could start my own school. That's really a vision I would like to do, when my children are at the age of when I think schooling is appropriate, 6+, could, do some other things before, but not really the structured schooling system. But I like working with this population because I like planting the seeds in the minds and hearts of kids that might not ever hear information like this. Because we talk about these things, that's the beauty of like being a teacher is like, I get to talk about things that also I think are important, that I get to integrate those things into my education of these children and could start waking them up of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating this pack of Skittles that has the red dye 40 and whatever else going on. Like that isn't supporting our bodies and our minds. And I get to talk about those things. And so that's nice.
Yeah, it's so wonderful that you're doing that you're teaching, and it's just such an important role. I'm really noticing that with my daughter who's 8 and the wonderful teachers she's had mainly through a Waldorf system. Yeah, the teachers are just, I don't have words for how great they are in our lives and my daughter's life. We've been going to a lot of different kind of enrichment programs and homeschooling. It's made everything possible for us and given my daughter such a great education and such a great childhood to have that. She goes 4 days a week, so we get her 3 days a week. And yeah, it's just someone who's in tune with that kind of natural teaching is so big. And it makes me feel so good because I grew up with like being out in the woods foraging with my friends. And yeah, you're kind of perfect for this podcast business because you're a teacher, you have a lot of different things you're interested in,
Oh, thanks for saying that. Yeah, that's what called me forward to doing this because I also just know a lot of amazing people. And I know we didn't know each other just kind of through like the virtual realms, but you can feel your people. You go, oh, I need to talk to that person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Familia.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I want to talk, kind of segue here to wild seed stewardship. So that's something that you've been getting into. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, okay, I'm not like you only have to grow native plants. When I'm working with herbs, it's much easier to work with native plants, and I don't want to be working with like Chinese medicine herbs. Or even though I am working with like mugwort, but not Chinese mugwort, I'm working with the native mugwort on the West Coast, Artemisia douglaisiana. It has the same properties. But the thing is when you're working with native plants, all the life in this area has evolved with it. They attract something like 8 times more insects, which I said earlier, but that's like the base of the food chain. Everything depends on how many insects there are. So if I was growing Chinese mugwort, which has the same properties as the native mugwort over here, let's say, it'd be great medicine, but I wouldn't be supporting the ecosystem as much. So, okay, with wild seed collecting, a lot of people are like, oh, I want that plant in my garden. So they'll go out and dig it up, right? And I'm guilty of this too when I was first starting too. But when you do that, a lot of times the plant won't survive, for one. 2, you're going to disturb the soil, which is probably that's where like non-native plants can really take root, is in disturbed soils. You could very likely invite something else to live there that's going to take over the patch that you took that plant from. But if you're collecting seed from one plant, you can maybe get 100 seeds, instead of bringing one plant home. Now you've got 100 plants that you get to plant and grow from seed, and they're going to do well. Whenever you're wild crafting or collecting seed, okay, so people usually say when you're wild crafting, take 10%, 20% at the most. That's way too much. And same with seed, because where I live, like I was saying, we have a strong community. There's a lot of herbalists. So if everybody goes to that patch and they take 10, 20%, it's not long before 50% is gone, 60%, 70%, if it just gets visited a couple times. So really, I always say, and I haven't gotten any pushback from this, but when you're wild harvesting, I always say wild harvest non-natives and grow natives. This way you're encouraging the life in your garden that is out in the forest. And you're also helping out the native plants by harvesting non-native plants, and do it sustainably too. So like non-native plants have their place, so they're strong medicine, and there's a lot of uses for it. But yeah, usually when I collect seeds or when I wild harvest, I always ask the plant. I try to drop in with the plant and make sure that the seed or the plant is okay to harvest, or if it wants me to harvest. The answer is almost always yes. It's almost like a beaming yes. But I have had a time, or this one time, where I was like, I really wanted to harvest, and the plant was just saying no. And I was like, that's so weird. I guess I wasn't really used to that, So I didn't harvest. And then I came back like a week later for something else, and I noticed they were spraying this place. It was kind of an urban property that was big and wild, and they were out there spraying plants. I was like, whoa, that plant like just gave me the heads up, and that area had already been sprayed and it was dead. So
Wow.
yeah, plant communication is a whole nother thing. I mean, that kind of started happening to me right when I started getting into gardening. And I was in Portland, Oregon when I had my first garden, and trees started talking to me. I didn't know what was going on. I felt really uncomfortable with it, and like I was going crazy. It kind of took like the advent of like, social media and people teaching plant communication for me to be like, oh, I'm not like the only one, like who does this. But yeah, okay, back to seed collecting. It's always better to collect seed when you want those plants in your garden. And it's good to bring an offering. One of the offering that I do a lot of times is weed. I'll take out if there's some invasive plants, I'll take those out. Not even like the whole stand, just like a gesture, kind gesture to this plant. Sometimes I'll scatter some seeds from the plants I collect further than they could scatter them, as a gesture. A lot of people bring offerings, I feel, well, I don't know. They think they're bringing something that they're supposed to bring as an offering that isn't really an offering because it doesn't have the meaning for them or their culture. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people will bring tobacco.
Yeah, I was picking up on that. Yeah.
But it's like an herbicide, tobacco plant as it falls, it creates, it's an herbicide. So if it's not your culture to do that, and you don't have that relationship, I don't feel like it's going to have much meaning, or you're going to quite get it. Try to find something in your heart that you feel and sit with the plant, and the plant will tell you like, hey, look at that plant over there. Can you take that out? That's when I started weeding. It was like just from checking in with the plants. And almost always they'd be like, hey, there's some Scotch brim over there. Can you take that out? Or there's like some Himalayan blackberry over there, It's like the trade system we were just talking about,
Totally. And I love that that's your offering instead of giving something that we think we need to give, whether that be tobacco, or sometimes I'll pull out a piece of my hair, boop, and I'll give my hair. But I like what you're saying of like offering some support, whether that be
service,
like, an active service to the space and where they're living. I love that.
That's what I do. I don't know. Check in with the plants, see what they want you to do.
For sure. So with the wild seed that you've been collecting and kind of spreading, what are some of your favorite plants?
Well, lately I've been working with trying to grow elderberries. We have a blue elderberry down here that is the native elderberry. And it's this really beautiful elderberry. It's like this blue, kind of powdery blue color. And it used to be that I could go out and wildcraft it anywhere. But with wildcrafting getting so popular, and especially elderberry medicine being so popular, people are just taking everything, and they're taking it before it's ripe. And they're pulling down branches and breaking branches. And they're allowing like blackberries to grow through them. And they're out there with scissors. They could just clip them back. It's just like they're not tending these plants at all, to the point where I can't wild harvest anymore. for one, our business has grown. So we don't do a whole lot of wildcrafting anymore. We try to grow everything for our business. But yeah, just in a lot of the spots that I used to go to are over harvested. So yeah, growing elderberry has been super rewarding and fun. Like watching these plants grow, they grow so quick, and they're ready to dig up and transfer to wherever right around Christmas. So it's like the middle of winter, you have something cool to do. You have this community thing where you have extras that you're giving out to people. I feel like they're the new Christmas tree. It's like, you're like, yeah, it's just so fun to like give someone an elderberry. Like right now, it's so special. And it's in our area, it's pretty hard to find them. It's not so much like up north where there's elderberry trees everywhere on the coast. We're so fortunate to live on the West Coast.
Oh, we are so fortunate.
I mean, it's not too far. You go off the coast and there's no trees.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a totally different game. A lot of these practices I use, I couldn't really use in other areas. I'd have to find other resources.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun too. And in places where you have bad soil, these hugels are great, if you can get some stuff together. I mean, so Hugelkultur, when it kind of started in Germany, like when it really started taking off after World War II, people were taking wood from like bombed out buildings and repurposing that in their gardens. And, it sounds pretty dire, but they were resourceful enough, like there was they were having their victory gardens after the war. So I don't know why I started talking about that, but yeah, it's about
people being
resourceful.
resourceful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. I would love a elderberry tree gift. That's super sweet. Yeah, you have to like go out. Like if someone was giving that to me, I'd be like, yay, thank you. Like gifting plants back and forth too. Love that. Trading your plant starts with your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, good thing to do. Our local farmer, Willow, who I was talking about earlier, so she gets a byproduct from my husband's business. He owns a cannabis farm, and she gets some of their byproduct, their cocoa, and she's been gifting us plant starts, which are really nice, like plant starts from her farm. And it's so great to have that. And that's what I could just plop into some of our garden beds, nice and easeful as far as like the veggie or some of the herbs. And they have also at their farm stand, there's a little nursery and they have a lot of native plants, native herbs, and super nice to be able to trade for that stuff.
Yeah. Once you start getting into the farm community, it is such a beautiful community, and there's so much trading of everybody's happy about their seeds and their plants, and everyone's happy to share. I feel like gardeners have always kind of kept their secrets, but we need to start sharing these secrets. It's like time for people to know all the tricks of the trade and just be openly sharing. And this is what's going to change the markets and change the ways we live. This kind of knowledge being common.
Totally. And that's where that reciprocity piece comes in. It's like it feeds that abundance. When you give, the more you can receive. It's this whole thing that we're doing. And we're doing that as gardeners and farmers. Like what we give to the land, it gives us back. We can mirror that in our culture. And my friend Brandon Dean and I talked about that on my third episode about permaculture. Yeah. We talked about how that can mirror into our society and how we're living. Like the people in the regenerative farm or the permaculture farming and herb, like I feel like there's this abundance that we're able to like overflow and give and teach and help each other. It's just like, it's modeling what is being felt and seen, and people aren't living in that with that scarcity mindset of I need to keep these secrets to myself and I need to be the one to benefit from that and me. Yeah, it's time for us to kind of get over that way of being. And like you said, share our secrets, share our trade secrets, share that what we've learned through our relationships with these plants or these ways, and what we've learned from our elders or other people we've known or other experts. Just continue to share that wisdom that supports all.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I have a herbal remedy business, and our main product is like herbal infused body oils. And we teach people how to make these so they don't have to buy them. So they can bring this into their home, and just sharing that for free has only grown our business and brought more intrigue. It seems like it wouldn't be that way, But it's really like, yeah, like you said, the more you give, the more you get, it's,
For sure.
and I got all that kind of thinking from my wife, like it wasn't
Oh,
like
that's so
natural to me,
sweet. That's so sweet. She's been so pivotal in my own unfolding of my journey and so inspirational to like being a catalyst and a support and a mentor in a way, even if I don't directly work with her, directly know her, just receiving the wisdom from her podcast, learning about different teachers that she had that are also some of my teachers, like Kimmy McBride,
Oh,
signing up for
okay.
her herbal
Yeah.
course, because I love making whole plant infused herbal body oils. I just think they're the absolute best things ever. And your wife has been totally an inspiration in my like love for that. And yeah, I actually also share a class on that at the local herbal fair in Washington. One of my classes is like herbal body oils and how to make them. And people want that knowledge and wisdom. And it feels good to teach others how to make their own medicine if they want, because then it ripples in their own little communities. And then they all want to share with each other and learn from each other. And it just creates like this web of like interconnected being and living. And yeah, we can all inspire and uplift each other to go back to these old ways and in good ways that feel nourishing.
Yeah. I'm pretty lucky to get to live with this woman for sure.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah. So I want to talk about like, you are the gardener for Mythic Medicine,
Yeah.
and just kind of go and share a glimpse of how you plan and tend those gardens with the needs of the apothecary in mind.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing it for so long now. It's like I mainly use perennials. I'm growing chamomile right now, which is an annual, and I've put like so much energy into that one plant this year, weeding and trying to get the seeds to go. And it's this calming nervine that's supposed to be like this really calming plant, but it's like having the opposite effect on me trying to grow this thing.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh. I'm obsessed with chamomile. She is like the thing that got me into herbalism. She is
oh,
the
it's a
plant
great.
that called me in. And when I lived on Vashon Island, my partner and I, at the time, we grew like this huge portion of our field in chamomile flowers. And it was just the best thing
Oh my
ever.
God.
I
It
just like
smells so
literally loved
good.
it.
I love
It
making
feels
tea
so,
with my daughter, and
oh,
like it's wonderful. I'm not really complaining, but it is a lot more effort to grow annuals. I basically grow just perennials, plants that come back every year. I don't have to replant. And native plants not all of the plants we use are native, but most of the ones I grow are, and they would just grow anyways, without water, without like Hugelkulturs
mm-hmm.
and if I need seeds, there's like a whole forest, like seed store for me, basically, which I don't really need seeds anymore because I'm growing these plants. Sometimes I go out and get some wild seed just to kind of rejuvenate the strains. But for the most part, it's the same plants I planted 3 years ago at this site. The last site, it was 4 years, basically the same plants. I'd go out and get new seeds if I was moving the garden around a little bit. And from our business growing slowly, I knew how much I needed to grow, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's kind of at this point where it's plateaued a bit, so I have space to grow more if the business grows, or if it stays the same, I'm good. If it's
Yeah.
less, I'm good.
Yeah.
And either
You
way,
could
I
even
still
sell
have more.
some bulk.
I know. Yeah, I have more than I would need always. And I don't usually sell it bulk, although I could. But like I usually have friends come over if they want herbs and they can harvest. And there's
Even
that.
better.
Yeah.
Love that. What is one of your favorite plants you've been tending in your yard?
That's a tough one. I'm not probably. I feel like mugwort's probably the one that I have the most connection with. It's a pretty dynamic plant. It smells so good. I just
Mm-hmm.
harvested motherwort yesterday, which isn't native. We always take like photos of of what we harvest, for social media stuff. And I set the basket on this rock trying to get like the right photo for it, and I sat it right on a rattlesnake and didn't realize it. It was a kind of juvenile rattlesnake. And then I was like, no, that's not right. I'll move the basket over here. And I moved it away. And that's when I saw the snake. And it just sat there. I put the video up on Instagram, but it's just like, it's not rattling its tail. It's not like, hissing at me or anything crazy. It's just like really calm. It's just sitting there trying to live its life. Yeah, I don't know. St. John's wort is a plant that I still go out and wildcraft. So that one always seems exciting because I'm like going off the land and usually going out with my friend Jeff, who helps me harvest. And we always have really good conversations. And so that's one that I really like to go out and do. But yeah, there's always, every plant has its own little thing and own little experience, like the snake medicine with the motherwort.
Yes. Yeah. And be greeted by a rattly friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I really love mugwort. She's been calling me a lot this year in particular, like reminding me that she's there. She's like, here I am. I'm over here and I'm over here and I'm over here.
Everywhere,
and it's time
right?
for you to come and give me some more attention. And I'm like, okay. I always go off a biodynamic calendar. I like go and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to come and get you till Thursday or Friday. I will come soon.
Right. Yeah. Where we live, it's Nisenan territory, right? So we're in the Sierra foothills, and their territory was all the way up the Sierra and down into the Sacramento Valley. And they were really known for their medicine and still are. And they would have this really long harvest because down in the valley stuff would be ready and flowering. And then in the foothills, it would be ready. And then further up the mountain, all the way up to the peak. So you get this like kind of 4-month long harvest season that's really cool about this area.
I love that. It's like just thinking about your plants in succession, even when you plant like annuals right in the garden. Say you're growing carrots, kind of planting them in succession. When can you access, this part over here? And it's nice to be in a place where you do have access to these wild plants that are great medicine and that you're tending and wildcrafting in a good way. I love that you mentioned that. I think that's really important. And it saddens me to hear that there are like areas of where you're living that are being over harvested. And I think that's a huge conversation we need to be having. And I love that you're planting things that people are over harvesting in your area and you're trying to like regenerate that in your own space so you can still access that medicine. Yeah. So really calling forth more mindfulness when it comes to that. And for people to also look into like the endangered plant lists, they're wild plants. There's lists that you can see what's endangered and maybe tend to the patches more of and don't over harvest or don't harvest endangered, plants. Go and help cultivate and spread them and do what you can for them. So yeah, we all need to definitely be really mindful because like you said, taking 10% of a patch, right? And then you don't know how much other people are taking. So you're like, okay, how many people come to the same patch as me? This is why I feel like it's so important to have such deep connections to the patches that you're going to and having observations over time and be like, okay, who is out here? Because there's been patches of nettle that I have a particular patch of nettle that I've harvested for the past 8+ years. And I've just obsessed with this patch and it's on Vashon Island. And my husband's like, honey, why don't you get a local patch? Why do you keep going back to that same one now that I don't live there? And I'm like, well, I have this relationship with that patch. And I know that it's not being over harvested there. I have a relationship with like knowing where it's growing and how it changes and that there's plenty and, going somewhere new. I'm like, oh, then I have to get to know a new patch. And so I went somewhere and I started to get to know like the closer living nettle, wild nettle to me. And I would like to start spreading her seed more around the outskirts of our land. But like I said, some of the ivy on the outskirts it's just encroaching. So I need to we have to tend to and create spaces and which we did plant them. But yeah, anyway, I'm just thinking about that now.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad thing that more people are into wildcrafting and medicine. We're kind of in this like infant state where it's like, this is exciting. And that people are just kind of taking too much, or maybe they think they're taking 10% and no one else is going to go there.
Yeah.
It's good, but there needs to be more tending and creating more abundance of these crops,
Totally. And
plants.
people,
I don't know if you call them crops, but
these plants. and having people use the spaces that they do have, or that they could, have the ability to tend wherever they're living, instead of having these lawns, these basic
Totally.
lawns that aren't feeding life or giving to life or in service of life, which is something you wanted to dive into, like being of service to life. Like these lawns are not having these basic manicured environments. Like let's all contribute to growing the native plants around, or things that can bring, more goods, more resources into our communities. And if we were all tending our land in these ways, we'd have so much available.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it would be life and service to life.
exactly. Yeah. I think that's what regenerative farming is all about, is creating more life instead of like going to war with it. And really, it's like, since we are made up of the same things as plants and all other life forms, it's like going to war against ourselves. It's not just, you know what I mean? It's like we're all part of life, and it's crazy to be doing things the way we're doing. And I think it's pretty cool that the USDA has like some 6 point thing on regenerative soil, even if it's not the complete picture. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. It's making a change in a way, like to the
Yeah.
current system. And so if we can bring more attention to that, that's, that the better, because there are always going to be these really big farms, or, currently in our modern day, like there are people who live in cities, like there has to be like bigger farming action going on to
Right.
sustain all life. But
Yeah.
yeah, have deep prayers that we're going in the right direction. I have so much hope. I know there's a lot of people who have really big feelings about everything going on in the current state, politically, whatever. There's so much going on. And, we do mirror what's going on. Like, we're not tending the earth. How can we tend ourselves? How can we tend each other? It models that. Like, so going back to our roots, like we wouldn't have as much as this like sickness in our society if we focused on how we were growing our food and our medicine.
It's a cool position to be in, especially having kids, is like we get to bring that in. That's what's been really exciting about herbalism too, is it was almost forgotten. So we're bringing it back, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. At least in Western culture, it was, it's so pharmaceutically driven for everything,
Yeah.
It feels really good to be a part of that.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does, to bring back the attention that these amazing plants that support life and the earth and plants and animals and the microbial life and the mycorrhizal life, like, yeah, just giving more reverence and attention to. And yeah, it's a cool time to live in, and support our own children to see life in that way and feel life in that way and be of service in that way. There's a lot of inspiring efforts happening. And yeah, conversations like ours hopefully will continue to spark people's hearts and minds to live in a different way, make different choices, and tend to what we can, these wild spaces, and ourselves and each other. And it will all model, like, we will stop seeing some of these major mental crises and physical crises. We will stop seeing as much of that if we just go back to the basics and the foundations. And that's what we put in our bodies and on our bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got way too sciencey.
I like the science.
I love the science too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But science is the good.
But the chemical science stuff in our foods and everything, it's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So cool. So we're coming up on time here, and I could talk to you probably forever. I feel like we could just talk and talk and talk.
Another time.
We'll have a couple closing questions. So if you could leave listeners with one piece of advice for tending the land and themselves, what would that be?
Probably just listen, slow down, listen to yourself, listen to the land, listen to the plants. I feel like the answers are already there. Like you probably know in your heart how to approach these things. Yeah.
Listen to your heart.
As cheesy as it is. Yeah.
It's so true though. If we all tap into that place, the heart center, that emanates a lot. So if we do really come to that place, it like you said, it feels cheesy, it feels basic, it feels like that's something that's been repeated time and time again. But there is something about that sacred place of the heart and leading with the heart and listening from the heart, loving from the heart space. We can feel when people are doing that.
I mean, most of the farming I've done has been observational, and that's what I mean by listening, is just observing and seeing, and then trying it. Like, and you might be like renting a place or something and be like, oh, I can't put it in a garden here, but you only get like one chance a year to learn something in gardening. So every garden, every pot that you plant or everything, you're going to learn something from it. And then when you do get that place that's your forever place, you're going to know what to do with the land for the most part. You'll still have to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll have to learn a completely new space. Yeah. But I love that. And just, sometimes my husband and I can be like, oh man, do we want to put the money and the resources to this thing on this place that we don't own, but we steward? Yeah. Just like you said, it's a learning opportunity every year. And we only get certain windows of opportunity in that. So it's okay to put more energy and effort and resources into these places. It's about that stewardship. So stewarding wherever you are, no matter if you own it or not. And land ownership is such a funny thing, isn't it? It's such a funny thing. Oh my gosh.
And you don't ever really own it. You're still paying taxes on it forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like we are all just stewarding places. So wherever you are, steward that place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what plants are teaching you the most right now?
Well, chamomile's teaching me a lot about patience. Gosh, I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't really know how to answer that one, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered it perfectly with the chamomile teaching you patience.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
Huge. Sometimes we have to really go into patience when it comes to gardening and tending, because even having to deal, like you said, feeding the critters on your land too. There have been deer that have wiped out what I've put my heart and soul into. Some seasons, where you go, no, like if it's the annual veggie garden, no, the gate was left open. I've had this whole thing, and there's so much to unexpected things that come up and so many lessons in it all. But patience is a huge one, because there is a lot that we are learning when it comes to bringing life back to land and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my wife and I really wanted to get Angelica into the apothecary, and I started growing, and it was growing great. And some kind of ground critter just loved the root. So I pulled them all down one by one over the course of like a month. I kept thinking he's going to stop, He did it. And like the lesson there was just like, you can't grow everything you want in whatever place you're in. You got to work with the land and work with the critters and figure out what you can grow,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do you have any advice for listeners who might be like, I don't know what I can grow?
Right. Well, I mean, there's plenty of like growing guides out there for vegetables, like what time of year to grow stuff. I've been so self-taught. I took one permaculture class when I first started, and the rest has just been, seriously like 10 years of like not producing much of anything, just enjoying watching things grow and enjoying being around the plants. I was never trying to get yields when I first started, but I was young then too. And over 30 years, I can get big yields with, natural ways. But if you're growing native plants, just go on walks and maybe take notes of when things are flowering, when they're emerging from the ground, when they're going to seed, and then you'll know.
Definitely. I love the advice of using guides. I've taken different classes and courses or taught different things when it comes to gardening and in farming and herbalism, like taken lots but like hugely self-taught. Self-taught by the own relationship, your own relationship with the plant, with the space, That's the best way to learn. Like I'm very like, I love to take the classes, know the science, know the things. I love to read the books, but the application and the practice is where the magic truly happens. And once you go down that road, you're like, you can never know it all. You, as a gardener, you will always be learning in so many different ways and growing through so much with there's just so much to learn. You can never know it all. So it's such a fun practice.
Yeah. And with the herb gardens, one thing you'll find out with herbs is they don't need full sun. A lot of them, a lot of vegetable crops do. And they don't need as much nutrients as well. So you can have a shadier spot and do pretty well with herbs. You'll see them growing in the forest where the forest meets the meadow or something, partial shade. Mm-hmm. Or that's another thing to take note of, is just what kind of area are these plants growing in? Are they growing in deep forest? Are they growing out in the middle of a meadow? Are they around the edges of a meadow? Are they near a water source? All these things will give you cues into how to grow them and what they need in a garden space.
I love that advice too, because I feel like, well, with our garden, we have garden beds that we grow our annual vegetables in outside of the back of our house. But our home, there's a light all day because we get the last of the sun, west facing view on the cliffs of the Salish Sea. But not all of the yard, and we have lots of big trees. So not all the yard gets hit all the time. So anyways, our annual kind of garden spaces for that space, it doesn't get a lot of light. And that's always been my kind of complaint, is I don't get enough light here to do really well in all the ways I'd like to do well. And I'm constantly trying to figure out how can we do better here with the annuals. But I'm like, why don't I just grow some herbs there too? I don't have to always do everything. Like you said, you don't have to do everything all the time. And you have to do what works best in a space, instead of me taking this space to try to grow corn that just did not come out in the space that I had. Yeah. Just doing something else that will.
Yeah. It's so much easier. And I feel like the easier it is, the more you can do too,
Yeah. To not force any particular plant in a place just because that's where you want it, which is what I have to learn.
Oh, and irrigation, setting up irrigation is great. So you're not hand watering. That can take up a lot of time, and you can lose a lot of crops that way.
Yes, hand watering. Although I use it as a meditative act too, when I have to do that in some areas. I'm like, okay, this is just me giving water to this soil, giving water to this life, and just using that time to just connect and watch and observe. But it takes so much time, dependent how big your space is. And so irrigation is huge, especially when you have a lot, because for life to really thrive, it needs that moisture. So drying things out, like you said, can just take something out.
If you want to go on vacation or something, it's nice to have the irrigation set up, especially if you're trying to have an apothecary where that's your business or something,
Yeah, definitely. Great advice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Owen, where can people connect with you or learn about your work?
Okay. Yeah. So our website is mythicmedicine.love. My Instagram handle is Struts Freely, and my wife runs our business page at Mythic Medicine on Instagram as well.
Perfect.
Yeah. Might hear some mentions of me on Medicine Stories podcast, my wife's podcast as well. But
people should definitely tune into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been pretty life-changing for me, and some of my friends just brought so much wisdom and knowledge into our lives, and people to then also learn from. Yeah, your wife is very masterful at what she does.
Yeah, she's a total bookworm. She's always looking for new information. I don't even know. She knows about things before anyone else. I swear, it's crazy. I don't know how she does it or where she pulls it from. We both have the same sources, it's
it's that Akashic record tuning in, how this wisdom comes in this one place, and then it's also somebody else is thinking it over here and these over here and here. It's we're all tuning into that, and she just is tuning in at a different frequency where she's here it is, and then there it all is.
Right.
Yeah. It's that Aquarius nature.
Right.
I have that too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Owen, it was such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. We'll have to do another round.
I would love that.
Thank Thank you for walking this path of holistic wellness and mindful living with me. I hope today's discussion planted seeds in the hearts of those that need it most and has inspired you in some way. If you found value in our conversation, please consider subscribing to the Sacred Rite podcast and leaving a review. It really helps this podcast reach more listeners, and I would be so grateful. I would love to connect over social media. My Instagram handle is @sacred.rite. There you can stay up to date on upcoming episodes, current offerings, and small batch releases of our handmade botanical remedies. I will leave any relevant links from today's episode in the show notes. The music in this podcast is from an incredible musician and a dear sister of mine, Satori Key. Be sure to check out her music on all major platforms. Her medicine music is transformative and deeply healing and has truly changed my life. Tune in next time. Until then, nurture your body and soul, and remember, it's your sacred right.